Yeah, was it actually broadcasting? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Okay, so welcome everybody to the GameSalad meetup. Art Thurman from the forums is going to be presenting tonight. We're going to talk about AI and how you can use AI in GameSalad. And Art Thurman's got a great talk here today. So for all the people who are new, who haven't been to these meetups before, we're going to have the presentations first, questions about it after, and then after all the presenters are done, then you guys can start asking me questions about anything about GameSalad, basically. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Art Thurman, and then go ahead and present his talk.
Oh, like Richard, also on occasion, take a pause, and then I'll see if there are any. We'll try to ask you any questions that popped up in between that might be better to answer real fast.
I didn't quite catch that.
Oh,
yeah, you might want to start your hand so he can actually hear you.
Every once in a while, you might want to take a pause during your presentation so we can just pass on questions to you.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, okay. Welcome to the. I'm in the Midwest, West Central Illinois, and it's raining furiously. It's kind of fun. Let me see here. I wanted to talk a little bit today. I had to do an audio check.
Yep, we're good at the office. Let's see, everybody, can someone post in the questions? Can everybody hear okay? Yep, Brandon says you can hear him. Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, great. Well, I've been interested in trying to figure out different ways to use psychology over the years, and I came across a theory called perceptual control theory that is like 180 degrees out of phase with conventional psychology. It's really kind of interesting. One of the main things that they try to get away with in perceptual control theory is the idea that your environment controls you. You know, most psychology is about predict and control and that sort of thing. But what perceptual control theory says is that your environment doesn't control you. In other words, stimulus response stuff doesn't really work. What's really happening is you're trying to, all living organisms are trying to control their own perceptions. It's kind of different. In other, you put it in game language, rewards don't work the way we think they do, and gamification doesn't work the way we think it does. It's not the case that we are being controlled by stimuli or anything like that, that we're actually in control, and that we're using those stimuli to be able to control our own environment. So, for example, in experimental research, oftentimes psychologists are looking for high correlations between something they've manipulated in the environment, like reward ratios or something like that, and subsequent behavior of the subject. So a high correlation means that the environment would be controlling. But all that really does is tell us what the environment's doing. It doesn't really tell us what the individual is doing. And so perceptual control theory looks for the exact opposite. It looks for the non-correlations. The things that people are trying to control oftentimes are not correlated with what the environment's trying to do. In fact, oftentimes you're trying to do the exact opposite. So the difference is an inanimate object, if you kick a rock in the road, it just skitters away. If you kick a squirrel in the road, it might just run up your leg and bite you or something like that. Environment only controls so much, and then living organisms take over and control the rest. So that's kind of the basics of perceptual control theory. So I tried to look at if we could create some kind of a system where we could actually look at things that don't correlate and see if that would help us to figure out what an individual might be controlling for or trying to control. So I created a little game, or not really a game, a little simulation in GameSalad. And for those of you who want to, I put it out there in the monthly meetup write-up in the out in the forum. You might want to grab a copy of it. It's called the Test for the Controlled Variable, T for CEV. And that's what we're really looking for, is to see what's being controlled. So I'm going to open up a copy of it. Maybe. That's interesting. Let's see if, I wonder if it's because I've got the screen sharing on here. We'll try it that way. Okay. Okay, so the idea here is that we've got some actors out in the scene, and I'm going to be giving them a disturbance, like the wind blowing or something like that. And the wind blowing is just going to blow these different objects around. Each object, each actor there is just being moved around by a particular disturbance, like a wind blowing. The reason they're moving differently is because I gave them each like a different function for the disturbance that was giving them the input. So, so the idea is that think of this as maybe as leaves blowing around on top of a pond or something like that. And each leaf, because it has its own different particular curl to it or whatever it might be, it's acting against the wind or with the wind with slightly different properties. So they blow around, they swirl around, and that sort of thing. You can probably see the red dot that's moving around as well. That's the actual disturbance. That's the actual kind of wind that's blowing, just kind of tracking across there. I thought I'd put it on there just so that we can see. But you can see that some of those actors are kind of going against it or with it. Each one of them have their own physical characteristics that make them slightly different, but they're all 100% correlated with the disturbance. They're just disturbance, the wind blowing, if you will, slightly differently. So that's kind of the idea. And then also, as I move the mouse around, the mouse is also disturbing each object as well. You notice that it's not disturbing the red dot, like the source of the wind blowing or something like that, but it is blowing around all the other objects. And so each object is getting the exact same information. Each object is getting the exact same disturbance from both the red dot that's moving it around and also the mouse, each and every one of them. And so if this were a psychological experiment, you'd be looking for the correlation between the disturbance and the object's positions as they are moved around by that disturbance. But but in perceptual control theory, we are looking for the opposite. No correlation between the disturbance and the objects. So even though those objects are moving around in look like they're moving around differently than the disturbance, they're all really just a function of the disturbance. But one's like backward and one's got X for Y and stuff like that. But they're 100% correlated without moving the mouse with the disturbance. Now once I move the mouse around, then each one of them are also getting the exact same input from the mouse. But if I get really good at this, I can actually control one of those objects and have it start, one that's on the left there. If I try to just keep it on the left, you can see it starting to turn a different color every once in a while. That's when its correlation with the disturbance goes to 0, the exact opposite of what a psychological experiment would be looking for. So that's kind of the general idea. And I'm really terrible at control here. I've got that one in the lower left corner that I was trying to control just a second ago. You kind of see it turning colors there a little bit. And so I've seen people do this experiment where they can do figure eights and they can move things around. Once again, all of the actors, all the white actors, are getting the exact same disturbance from the red actor and the exact same disturbance from the mouse, from the cursor. And yet, if you just control one of them, if you look at one of them and try to move it around in a pattern like in the lower left-hand corner there, it'll actually show up differently. It'll change colors because it can actually detect which one you're trying to control. And all the rest are kind of like popping off every once in a while. But that's kind of the general idea. So the test for the controlled variable is a test for what the person is trying to control, what's on their mind, what are they concentrating on, what are they looking at. So how could you use this in a game? You could actually set it up to see which object they're looking to control, which object is not correlated with the with the disturbances that are going on. So that's kind of the general idea here. And so maybe I'll just show a little bit of the background of what's going on. There are just two actors, two prototypes. The disturbance actor, once again, is just really supposed to be acting as the wind kind of a thing, or some kind of gentle disturbance that's kind of going on in the background of stuff. If I open it up, you can see here that there's a group just for making a simple disturbance. I'm just manipulating the X and Y chord. It would work much better and be much smoother if it were like a simple waveform or something. That would, so it really doesn't matter the disturbance pattern. You can use all sorts of different disturbances, but it'd probably be a lot nicer if it was, instead of just controlling for X's and Y's, it was actually doing more of a waveform or something like that in X and Y. This next part here is where it gets kind of weird. This is where you calculate the statistics. Any of you have ever taken statistics may have heard of variance and correlations and stuff like that. So what we're really doing here is calculating a correlation coefficient against the red disturbance and each white actor. And so I won't go into the statistics and all that, save that for a statistics class. Then every so often, about every 2 seconds, I'm resetting everything back to 0. That's why every once in a while you'd see everything kind of pop back to purple, because it was, or pink, I guess, because it was, I was just zeroing everything out, and at 0 correlation, then everything's, or nothing's correlated. And then, oh, I probably shouldn't have stuck this in here, but this is just where I'm making the mouse move as well. Simple mouse movement, checking for what the mouse is doing. So basically what this is doing is it's checking to see the distance from the lower left-hand corner, the magnitude of the lower left-hand corner of where all the objects are. And it's just looking at distances. That's all it's really doing. So the distance from this corner here to right here is just calculating every so often, every fraction of a second. And then each one of these distances from 0 as well. And as they're correlated from the distance of, from the lower left-hand corner, that's all it's really looking at. So if I go into actor 1, this just tells it to move with the disturbance. This is telling it to look at the mouse and see if it's moving in accordance with the mouse as well. Once again, here's how to calculate a correlation coefficient. If you're really interested in seeing how you calculate correlations in GameSalad, this is one way to do it. But I won't go into the statistics. Once again, here's a little reset to just set everything back to 0 again. And here's the big deal, though, I guess. If it's a low correlation, then change the color. So R is the correlation coefficient. If it's between negative 0.2 and positive 0.2, that would indicate a very low correlation. A high correlation would be a positive 1, and the high negative correlation would be a -1. So the range is from -1 to +1, with 0 indicating that that's a low correlation. A 1 would indicate that it's a very, very high correlation. So once again, we're looking for low correlations, exactly the opposite of psychological research. The lower the correlation with the environment, oftentimes the more the object is being controlled by the user. So this phenomenon is really pretty robust. The way I have it set up here is, that's all we really have is mouse input or keyboard input. But you could use the same thing with just about any kind of input, anything you can get to, any kind of things you can get to record. Then you can start recording what people are controlling. It just depends on what kind of inputs you have as to what kinds of things you can check to see what people are controlling for. So here's kind of a simple way, and it really is reading one's mind, one's intentions through the arm to the mouse, to the cursor, to the screen. And since that's the input we've got, that's the input that we can use. But it really is measuring the difference between what a person is perceiving, where they want something to be, and where they want it to be. It's measuring their intentions. And so in that way, you can doing the test for the controlled variable, you can figure out what they're trying to control for, what they're actually trying to do. So that's kind of the gist of it. You're welcome to. I put this out in the forum, and you're welcome to take a look at it and mess with it and see what you can come up with to get a better feel for how to actually test for what people are controlling for, how to test for what's on people's minds, or how to test what people's intentions are. So that's kind of it, really. Pretty fast, I guess. Any questions or anything?
So I don't know if there's any questions yet on there. Let's people start talking. So what do you find works better for the range of inputs? Do you find like a mouse, the range of inputs for the mouse gives you better predictability, or something smaller in degrees of range of values?
Well, that's really all we have is the mouse. Are you talking?
You could use an analog stick on a joystick.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, yeah. So any of those will do just fine. You're really just any input will do as long as you've got good input, and what you're really looking for is just the difference or the non-correlation between what the person is observing, what they can look at, and what they can perceive, and any disturbances. It kind of makes sense when you think about it, but psychologists have gotten so used to thinking about input-output, stimulus-response, those sort of things. They've kind of forgotten about the flip side of things, where people are actually trying to control perceptions and stuff as well. So it really doesn't matter. I would suspect that you probably get the same kind of correlations with a joystick as you would with a mouse. It certainly is easy enough to do and experiment with that.
But would you get something different, for example, if it only had a 1 or 0 as your input ranges?
Nope. It's really robust. Correlations are correlations. It's a statistical analysis, and there are correlation coefficients to deal with 1s and 0s, just as there are with floating point numbers as well.
Oh, Scott has a question about the accelerometer. There's another way of doing input.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That'd be actually kind of fun to do. Once again, as long as a person can actually control the object and can perceive what it is they're trying to control, then the input, it's really robust in terms of what kind of input device.
I've got a hand raised for Noah. I'm going to unmute Noah and let that person talk.
Okay.
Is that right? What?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, Noah, are you there? I see your hands raised. Did you have a question? Okay, we'll come back and always answer in the chat. So let's see. Okay. Oh, we're getting another one from Ted. Okay. Blah, blah. Something's on with the forums. Something's going on with the forum. You got the answer, Cam? Okay. Any other questions? Any questions from people here in the office?
Interesting talk, though.
So have you imagined, or is this mostly just a fun experiment, or are you actually thinking of applying this to a game?
Oh, this was mostly just for fun, and I don't really have a particular game in mind or anything like that. I'm more interested. My use of GameSalad tends to be. I'm more interested in simulations and not necessarily in entertainment games, but actually using GameSalad as a way to do testing and simulation and stuff like that.
Do you think this might be a good thing for like a city building game or a game where you're simulating something like a city environment?
If you can figure out what they're trying to control, what they're doing basically, and what their intentions are, and then you just supply a little bit of a disturbance and see if they fight back from that disturbance, then yeah. You know, say you want them to. I'm trying to think of a variable for a city building game.
Like traffic.
Yeah. So traffic flow and stuff like that, or you know, distribution of water resources, or any of those kind of sim kind of things. Yeah.
It seems that this would be really interesting to apply to any sort of like sandboxy type of game where you kind of need to know what the user is interested in right now, you know, and give it the game where you're not tightly controlling about what they can do, and they have a lot of choices of what they can do, and you want to kind of keep track of that.
Yeah. It works for all those sort of things. You can also test for when people give up.
Yeah, that's even better.
Yeah, you can tell exactly when somebody quits controlling something. It's pretty immediate. So really, in a way, this is really kind of a subfield of cybernetics. But usually in cybernetics, they're controlling output. You know, they make control systems to control output. This is kind of a subfield of that, where you don't control output, you control input, what they're sensing and perceiving and that sort of thing. And it's really kind of interesting to see the difference when you start thinking about it in terms of people's input, rather than trying to see what they're actually doing, and instead looking for what their intentions are. It really makes things interesting. I think another way to think about this is quite a few years ago I was involved in neural network kind of research, and this is really like testing for one node of a perceptron or something like that, just one node in a neural network. If you set up a bunch of these in sequence and tied into each other, you would actually create an artificial neural network.
Interesting.
So we have some more questions. Let's see.
I'm answering
Joshua Reed says, great presentation, Richard. Very interesting. Can you dive into statistics sides a bit more? Maybe how many inputs are you measuring, or the math of it?
Oh, okay. Without getting too far into the statistics, I'm calculating a correlation coefficient. It's just a classic Spearman's R correlation coefficient, and what I'm calculating is, or the correlation I'm looking at is the correlation between the lower left-hand corner, the 0, 0 spot in GameSalad, and the distance. I didn't use X and Y, I just used magnitude. So the correlation between the distance from 0 that the red dot is in, basically, and correlating that against all 6 of these actors. So it's calculating 6 correlation coefficients, 1 for each actor, and it's looking at the correlation between where the magnitude from 0, 0 to the red dot, and then the magnitude from 0, 0 to each of the white actors. And it's just looking to see if those are correlated or not. And so a correlation coefficient is really robust in terms of it can have different scales, it can have different numbers, you can have things going backwards, sideways, all sorts of things. But if there is a correlation, it will show up in the correlation coefficient. Even if it's opposite, that's just a negative correlation. Correlations go from -1 to +1. -1 is highly negatively correlated. +1 is highly positively correlated. And the closer you get to 0, that indicates no correlation. And so that's all I'm really looking for is the correlation between the red square's magnitude from 0, 0 and the other object's magnitude from 0, 0. And since they're all tied in, they're all getting the red dot's position as part of pushing. They're 100% correlated with the red dot, and so they should all be a +1 or a -1, depending if it's which way the correlation is going. But by moving it around, moving them all around with the same mouse, with the same cursor location, same disturbance from the cursor, they're all getting the exact same input from the mouse. Actually be negatively correlated if or not negatively correlated, zero correlation, if it's actually under perceptual control, if the person is actually trying to control it. So that's probably about as good as I can get without going deep into statistics and stuff like that and that sort of thing.
How would this change if you're doing something like a multi-touch system where the user is pushing multiple places on the screen?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. A multi-what?
Right. Like a multi. So you have here with like one mouse cursor, right? The user is inputting some range of analog. What happens? Can you use the same type of system if you had like a multi-touch where the user is using like you're actually reading the like 4 or 5 touches from the screen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So as long as each object, each actor receives the same input from, or doesn't have to be the same input, but a function of the same input, you could have 10 disturbances, you can have 20, you can have 100. But if it's under control, the correlation between those disturbances and the actor's magnitude, in this case, will go to 0 if it's under control. Or not, I shouldn't say 0, but it'll go nearer and nearer to 0 if it's under control. It's just a statistical. It's just statistics.
Joshua says thank you for the explanation of the statistics. Anybody else have any questions? Going once, going twice. I want to thank Richard for this great presentation. It was really fascinating.
You're welcome.
So as I said in the presentation, we had a surprise, and at GameSalad our employees tend to do sometimes off-work hour stuff, like you saw when I did the joysticks. And Steve here has done some work off hours, and we put it into a nightly build. And so he's going to go ahead and show you what thing he's done. And since we're on the topic of AI, it falls in pretty well. So I'll hand it over to Steve.
Well, we need to wait for the poll going.
Oh, as we finish the poll.
Over the idea of just like get something for me to do while I did all that.
I'm going to make you presenter, Steve.
Yeah.
There you go.
How do I share my screen here?
There should be a button. And Francis says it's very interesting and trying to find a good way to use this in a game. Yeah, I'd love to see some people, if they got some, put an arcade or something like that and see what kind of things you can make with this kind of AI and you know, this new feature here, or this is a new algorithm I guess for the word. Phil asked, can you use this to control the female mind?
What was that? Can you use it to control the female mind?
Yeah, that's what Phil asked.
Well, you can't control the mind, but you can certainly determine what intentions are. So you can read one's intentions, but you can't control them.
Alright,
here now.
Ah, there we go. Okay.
All right. There we go.
Hey, all right. So, so like the announcement said, I'm going to be talking about pathfinding today. So let's just go ahead and actually show the demo. First of all, let me see if I can minimize this. How I got here is a map that's being dynamically slowly. Up in the upper left here, we have my character, and the lower right here, we have the guy that's going to be pathfinding. And basically, I can move my guy around, and if you pay attention to the purple guy, he's going to pathfind to me. The black squares are blocking, so he can't go through those. The brown squares are interesting. He can actually move through the brown squares, but they cost twice as much. So every square has a cost associated with it. And so, for instance, he won't try to go to this square here at 6'5", and then try to get to me because it's much faster to go through 6'4" to get to me, because the cost of 6'4" and to me would be like 1, 2, whereas the cost of 6'5" would be 2, 3. So I can actually use that to kind of keep him at bay, because he won't actually take a direct route to me. Of course, if I move out, then he will take a direct route to me. But so that's kind of an example there. And then I've actually got a couple of different maps here. So let's load up a new one. So this is the same grid map as far as layout goes, but there's a restriction on the ghost here, which is that he can only move orthogonally. He can't move on the diagonals. And so we see here, as long as I'm in this little 2x2 area, he won't actually pathfind to me. And the reason for that is because he can't move from the diagonal at 3, 3 to 2, 2. So he just sits there because he doesn't know how to get close to me. As soon as I move out, he starts moving. And notice I can move on the diagonal and he can't, because I didn't put any restrictions on my movement as far as movement goes, just on his. And as soon as I move back in, he stops moving because he doesn't know how to get to me. Another kind of map that's very useful in pathfinding, especially if you're doing like war games, use these a lot, is the hex map. And this is the exact same. This hex map is taken from the exact same data as the square maps, laid out differently. So you can see that as I move along here, he moves along the hex grid. You can move in any of the 6 directions, just like you can move in the other ones. And notice here, he actually goes through the brown area because it's actually, from the hex map, it's much slower to go around all the way around here than just go straight through, even though it costs more to enter this particular hex than or enter from a green hex to another green hex. So he actually goes here, and then, of course, catches up to me. So it's an interesting seeing the difference between, and of course, he just stays with me now. It's interesting to see the difference between the types of movements that are generated from the different map styles. So actually, let's go to the code here and see how this works. So the basic deal is, first of all, there's some setup code where it reads a table, and let's look at the tables here. So we've got the map table, and this just defines a 10 by 10 grid that corresponds to the 10 by 10 grid that you saw on the demo. Most of the values are 0, and that's just these are the entry costs of the thing. So 0 just means it's free. You can free to enter. The cost for the center brown squares, you can see here, are 2, and then the blocking squares over here are -1. So over here, and you can see the blocking squares over to the lower right and the left. You can see where the black squares came from. So that's the map, and then it just corresponds to that. The next table that we used here is the location. Since we can't actually read another reactor's data directly from another reactor, they will write their grid coordinates to this table so that they know where each other are, because otherwise we wouldn't know where to pathfind to. So me is the little the round guy, and then the ghost is the ghost. And you can see here I start out at 1-1, and the ghost starts out at 10-10, and they'll update themselves as they move around, so that they know where to look for. And then the last one is the path itself, and it starts out empty. But what this is that every time we generate a path, this table will get filled in. And it will start out where row 1 will be the starting location. So, for instance, the ghost is initially starting out at 10-10, and he's trying to get to 1-1 because that's my starting location. So this first row would be filled in with 10-10, and let's say he's moving on that diagonal. So the next row would be 9-9, so on and so forth, until he hits something to block him. And then the values would change depending on which way you want it to go. So basically, every time we run a path search, this gets cleared out and then filled in with the new path that the ghost is taking. Now, since my position is constantly changing because I made this a turn-based demo rather than a real-time demo, we only actually need to look at the second row here, because the first row we know is the ghost's current position. So obviously, we don't need to pathfind. We don't need to move him to there because he's already is there. What we really need to do is that we want to look at the second row. So when this guy gets filled in, we want to say, oh, the next place he wants to go to is going to be in this second row. So we'll see in the ghost's behavior that we're going to be looking at the second row of this table all the time to see where is the next place he wants to go. And then we'll regenerate the path and see where is the next place now he wants to go, and so on and so forth. The way the game generally works is that after the setup, I've got two me's, actually, one for the hex and one for the grid. But the behaviors are effectively the same on these two guys. What happens is that the grid, the me actors, look for mouse clicks, and then move the actor to wherever on the grid the user clicks the mouse, and then they set a flag that's a global game flag that says "Ghost update your position," and then the behaviors on the ghost will actually go and trigger off that global variable to update themselves. So we'll actually go to look at the ghost because that's kind of where all the work is done. We have 3 ghosts here, and basically they effectively all have the same behaviors, but they just have different colors. So, and we open it up here. So we have some initialization code, and that's basically just setting the initial table values to where the ghost is. So we can see here, game locations, ghost, setting it up to row and column 10. We're setting up some internal variables here to 0, and setting initialization values, so we don't need to worry about that. We update the ghost position, and that basically says that when the table values change, so when the ghost actually keeps track locally of his row column, you can see here on the left, he knows where his current row is and his current column is. So we see when the table cell value of the locations change, he'll update his position based on that. And here's the formulas just to get the offsets to the actual X and Y based on the actual map grid location. So this is all pretty straightforward, kind of boilerplate stuff for moving around. But here's where all the work is really interesting. It's done. So if we're initialized and the game update ghost flag set to true, we use this new behavior here. And this behavior is called Pathfind. And it takes a table, that is the map. It takes, and that's the input table. It takes a table that is the output table, which is the path table. It takes a starting cell and a destination cell that you're trying to move to. And it will actually generate a star path from the starting row and column to the destination row and column. And it will fill in this game path with the values that correspond to the map. And once that's done, we do have this rule here that says if if the table row count of path is greater than 1, then we have a path. If there is no path from the start row and column to the destination row and column, the row count of path will be 0. And because there's no path, so it got cleared out and then never filled in. So you check here. So this says that when there is a path in existence, then we'll go ahead and we'll grab the path, and we can see here it's the second row of column row, which is can be a little confusing. It's row, and then a second row of the column, and we will set those to the game locations row and column, and that will feed back into the update loop. So as you can see here, we have this new behavior here that does the A-star pathfinding for you. It's in the new nightly build that went out an hour or two earlier.
Yep, you can get it right now on the downloads page.
Yeah.
If you're a pro member.
If you're a pro member, yes, this is a pro-only behavior. And it makes, it kind of opens up an entirely new kind of set of games you can do now.
Chrono Trigger. You can do Chrono Trigger, just like make one a person
Yeah.
and then have your enemies follow you, and once their locations match, you go into your battle screen.
Yes. Yeah, even though the demo here, which we're going to make available, is a kind of a turn-based demo, there's no reason why you can't do this in real time. And you can make your map fairly large, basically 65,000 by 65,000, which should be big enough for most purposes, I think. So that's kind of the intro to new behavior here, and I hope we will end up seeing some really interesting games that come out from this, the ability to do this pathfinding.
When we're talking the office, you can now make Diablo, basically.
Yeah, you can make Diablo now. You can make Chrono Trigger. Anything. You can make any. This really kind of opens up like a lot of RPG kind of games. Or Zelda-style games where you have like enemies that want to get closer to the player character and have to go around obstacles, and have the player character be able to use obstacles to try to hide from enemies. This helps out with that. So we're really looking forward to seeing what you all can do this feature.
How quick is the pathfinding?
Very quick. I mean, it's written in C, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily super optimized because we're using kind of standard C++ container classes, which do have some inefficiencies built into them for the benefit of convenience of actually using them. But I would say, like I said, you can do real-time pathfinding at like.
How many times a second would you recommend them running it?
Well, it's not really how many times a second because you're going to be limited by your frame rate. It's more like.
But they can do it every frame, like it would.
Oh yeah, you can easily do it every frame. It's more a matter of how many actors you can apply it to in one frame rather than how many frames you can actually do to. Mm-hmm. And I would say, easily, let's just toss out 100 per frame. 100 actors per frame, applying it to. I would say without any concern.
Yeah, we'll run some more tests, and feel free to test it yourselves. We'll see if we can hit the limit. We haven't had a chance to do much.
Yeah. It kind of depends. I mean, if you, like I said, the maximum size of the map it can handle is 65,000 by 65,000. And if you have one guy, if you actually make a map that big, and have one guy at one side, one corner, and the other thing at the other corner, and have lots, make the longest possible path in there by having cells blocked out. You probably aren't going to have as many actors being able to capture that as a small 10 by 10 map. So it's very dependent on the size of your map and how close things get.
And you get to use you can use our network behaviors, and you can push down new maps.
You can push down new maps. You can actually modify the map dynamically. So for instance, if I have the ability to, for instance, move those black blocks around as my character, I can actually update the map, regenerate the path. And now he'll have, the ghost will have to move and try to get around the blocks I've been moving around. And you can do all sorts of things like that. You can also use the cost value to make to do terrain changes. So, for instance, let's say I started out with an entirely green map, and then had the ability to cause, let's say, mountains to grow. You click a square, and all of a sudden that square and all the squares around it, the cost to enter those is greater. You can do dynamic map changes like that. So you can do some really powerful effects using the system.
How would you you could also save these tables off? And
Yeah, you can save the tables off. They're just tables. So they're standard tables. The only restrictions of it are they have to have integer columns. They're all integers, and the path has to be 2 integer columns as well.
So we got a whole bunch of questions here. So Brandon says thank you. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
Go backwards. The idea is that they basically the questions got answered.
Will it be? Let's see. Welcome, Vesley, or I'm not sure I pronounced. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name. Will it be a pro feature? Yes, it will be pro. Let's see. Jonathan Francois. If I'm reading things correctly, that plays together now functions. Yes, the final 2 bugs. There were kind of 2 big bugs with plays together. One was that when you got new data in, the tables weren't updating correctly, and the other was that usernames were coming down as user 1, user 2, user 3 instead of their accounts. And it counts. So all those should be fixed with the latest release. Hopefully all the plays together stuff is good. Let's see. Got it. But in the future, once it is in the stable, no, it will always be pro. If you're a free user, you will not be able to access the pathfinding. This is for some people that are pro users. Get the release notes. Great behavior. Thanks. Depth sorting algorithm for isometric games. That may be something we're adding in the future, or not. I don't know.
Yeah, we got to talk about it. There's some issues with how that's put together. We were actually talking about that at the office today about how we would do that.
Yeah. This is something I actually just did on the weekend in a couple hours because I had some free time. And it's just actually something I've been wanting to do since I got the GameSalad pretty much. When I got the GameSalad, there were like 2 things I wanted to add to GameSalad: networking and pathfinding. And so I've actually managed to get them both in now.
Yeah, because pathfinding was not in the schedule, anywhere in the schedule.
Yeah.
I just received it all in spare time.
Yeah.
If you had like a continuous image, and then maybe could you have a grid test the color of the map, and then create a value that way, so that way you don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, any way you can generate the map. The map can even not have a one-to-one correspondence with what's on the screen. It can be kind of an abstract map.
Yeah, it's up to you how you correlate the table data to the actual what you see on the screen.
Yeah.
You can even make it 3-dimensional, right? You can use square be actually like a 3-dimensional type thing.
So that does make it mainly then make an interface for 2-dimensional. Make an interface for 2-dimensional tables so that you could, or I guess for 3-dimensional tables, so you could have like one layer to represent the map, the pathfinding tables, and another layer to represent, the visual or some kind of formation.
Yeah, or you can always have 2 tables, and this is the visual table. And
that's the thing. Is like then you have 2 tables.
Yeah, well.
Yes. So we have a question. How is it with other characters blocking the path? Is there a way to set friendly characters which you can pass and enemies who act as an unpassable block? Basically, what you'd want to do for that is before you run the pathfinding algorithm and modify the map for the character that time. Either that or have multiple maps that are modified per character. So you might have, you have 3 characters, you have 3 different maps, and you'd set the blocking or not blocking value based on that. It's kind of dependent on how you do it, but it's certainly technically possible. You just have to remember that the map is modifiable, and if you want the particular square not to be able to move through because another character is in it, all you have to do is set the value to -1, and all of a sudden whoever is pathing next won't be able to move through that. But you can do that for one character, set it back to 0 for another character and then repath, and that character can now move through that.
So, Francis
folks, that will keep GameSalad getting better.
Yep.
I totally agree with
Yep,
that.
that's how we pay the bills, folks. Get pro.
Yeah. Is the file going to be up as a demo on the forums? Yes, we will be putting it up as a demo.
Probably in the same forum post as the post I just made for the United Guild.
Yeah.
Yes, Bill, you said so look at the Bill, I just tried to update the United Guild. It says the update error failed because of the sign. Yep, look at the release notes. We know the issue. We were able to fix it before we could release it. You'll have to manually download it. Go manually download 14 and install it, and that'll fix the problem. The next update will update automatically, but it's in the known issues. Sorry, Bill. We tried to get it fixed, but it just wasn't enough time. Any other questions? I'm really intrigued to see how to use Richard's presentation with that algorithm with the pathfinding.
Yeah, I think it could actually be.
Things with set variables for the environment.
Maybe like The
different
Sims,
things.
something like The Sims, where you're the Sim is trying to get here, and then you're trying to see.
How it's being controlled.
Or what possibly the user's trying to do, and then you see what the user's trying to do and try to counter that with the pathfinding.
Yeah.
That would be.
The simple easiest one is to figure out who you're trying to get away from or toward.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea
Mafia
of the
or
previous,
something like that.
Yeah, because the previous is about finding a correlation between your actions and the things that are on the screen. So if everything is trying to pathfind in a certain way, then all you're trying to do is see if you can find a high correlation between what you're doing and what one of the actors is doing, and that's the one that starts changing its behavior based on.
Yeah. Instead of having all the actors in his example just move according to the wind, you can actually be moving according to various pathfinding algorithms, and then you can use the correlation to actually figure out which one the user is interested in.
Jeffrey's asking about. Sorry. Jeffrey's asking about the meetup recordings. Yes, we have them all on YouTube. You can watch all the past meetups, and this one will be posted sometime very soon. We're going to actually try to get this out sooner than we've been normally doing it.
Notifications are necessary now to finish off multiplayer games. I agree, and that is something we will be working on in the future.
Yeah, I don't have a timetable for that. My schedule is getting pretty full, so I'm still trying to get the ARC build out.
Yeah, we're trying to get the next stable built out, and we're trying to get Windows at parity with the Mac.
Yeah.
And then we'll be looking at things like notifications and whatnot.
Yeah, we're trying to stabilize before we put new features in.
Right.
Stabilize first, new features next.
Yeah, the only reason, like I said, remember, the only reason that this new feature is in is because I just felt like doing it on a weekend one day. So this was not an official sanctioned or scheduled thing.
Okay. You might read this one long from Mike there.
Anyone want to take on a snap to grid or a multiple copy paste?
Side project. Yeah, so I have a list to go through for all these kind of usability features. We've actually had many discussions about copy and paste in the office. I'm sure some of you saw Deep Blue's apps and his merging. It's actually really painful in GameSalad, and we need multiple copies. So there's a couple problems. One, copy and paste doesn't work as well as it should, because I like to be able to copy between documents. And there's some problems with the way you do internal storage, so we're trying to figure out ways to solve this easily. Two, so when I got here, I inherited a very large code base. The entire code base is set up to handle single selection. So to change multi-select actually becomes a very heroic effort, because I have to change almost the entire code base to handle that. I tried it once on a project we were doing that we never released, and it was not fun. So while I really want to do multi-select, I'm not sure the easiest path. It might actually be simpler to do in Windows than it will be on Mac. So we're going to have to going forward. I'd love to put it in there. I just don't know an easy way to do it yet. But yes, I think we should definitely, we're looking at putting more usability and feasibility. Like one everything you guys always bring up, and I really do want to fix, is the asset media browser and like the active browser. It's really hard if you get hundreds of thousands of things in there, and that control doesn't really. Everybody wants to do folders, but that control doesn't really handle folders. That's the same kind of control that you would see in like iPhoto with a bunch of photos. So a better way, what I'd like to do in that kind of situation is give you the ability to tag with categories the items and put a search bar in there, so you could say, show me all the actor images. I tag all these images as enemies. show me all the enemy images. And then I want to find the one called destroy. And that way you can do a very quick search to find it. I think that would be the easier way. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of usability things I want to put in there. And I know we've been having requests for them forever, but unfortunately, Steve and I are the only two working on both creators right now. So there's only so much time in the day we can do these features. So we have to prioritize. And that's one of the reasons why we have that voting feature, and so you guys can help us prioritize features you guys want over other things. We'll continue to try to make sure the bugs get prioritized, but feature-wise, that's where if you guys want to say, this is the feature I want, that's where you guys need to vote and discuss amongst the community what features you guys really want to see next.
Yeah, unfortunately, what a feature is like visually, cut and paste. So everybody does cut and paste. And then like pathfinding is, a complex algorithm. But just because one is conceptually simple and one is conceptually complex doesn't mean the actual creation of that corresponds. There's actually oftentimes a negative correlation between that. Talking about correlations here, cut and paste can actually be hard, whereas the pathfinding thing only took me a couple hours. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are like that, where a feature may seem simple to implement, and it turns out just because a lot of we're dealing with an older code base that isn't being created from scratch here, actually implementing a particular feature turns out to be quite difficult.
Yeah.
So
we have a few more things in here. Scott's talking about timetables. I don't really have a really good timetable for 1415. Let me get ARC done. Let me get stable builds out, and we'll talk timetables when I actually know how long it's going to take. Jonathan posted something for you, Steve, about the work.
So we'll say, I think based on what we remember about it should be a little shorter because we're not.
Short one.
Oh, 14 is a short one. Okay.
15 is a long one.
Okay.
Sorry again, it was Joachim. I'm sorry, I'm terrible pronouncing names. Yeah, Joachim?
I think it's Dukum.
Okay. Yeah, it asked, is 14 a version with the render engine? Yes, 14 has the tile-based mega texture rendering engine.
Yeah.
You should see, we're still fixing some bugs, like Android doesn't work properly, but I'm going to sit down and we're going to, with our graphics guy on Monday or next week and try to iron out some of those issues so you'll have a better working Navi build. What are your impressions on using Scene Builder with GameSalad as a multi-slicing grid line? Yeah, we've had these discussions too. So like grid alignment, I like to put that kind of stuff in too, and the problem again is it's not as simple as you'd think. If I had a code base from scratch, I could put them in a heartbeat. But since I'm dealing with a historically large code base, these features are not as easy as you guys think they are.
So I might be able to shed some light on what some of these simple features are difficult because GameSalad was designed to be very interactive, and so what you see displayed on the screen for the scene editors is mostly done in the GameSalad engine. So things that are traditionally easy in GUI tools like grid, mapping the grid and copying and pasting, they're actually a little harder in our code base because you're actually going in and we're reaching into the engine and changing things and getting data from it. So that's kind of why.
Yeah, Windows is set up a little easier because it doesn't have that kind of compatibility. So there is actually a version of multi-flex with Windows we have somewhere that we'll at some point resurrect and get actually working. So you may actually find that you may have to switch between the OSs to get the full usability. But we're going to try the best we can. If you guys are any crashes or bugs, please submit them to the bug database at bugs.gamesalad.com. Like I said, this is a nightly build, so it is very unstable. Put the pathfinding in, and we shared a few things, and we sent to QA, and they looked at it to make sure Creator opened, and then we shipped it out. So there are possibly crashes, there are probably bugs. But just send the bugs our way, we'll fix them, and as soon as the stable builds are out, we will put this towards an RC and start stabilizing this. And we're actually close, so bringing a little bit of an update. So I actually finished most of the ARC bugs today. I'm down to one ARC bug. Thanks, Armeline, for finding some more interesting issues. And then I have some memory cleanup I want to do because many of you guys notice GameSalad sometimes takes a little more memory than it should be and it spikes in places. So I want to clean that up before we ship out the stable build. But I'm glad you guys enjoy the speed boost and it's working really well for you. And Steve, you're down to what, 5 bugs on Windows or something like that?
Yeah.
And we just put out a Windows RC as well, which is really nice. And Windows is pretty usable now.
Yeah. A lot of bugs getting fixed. The behavior scrolling is still a little squishy in some instances, but it's much more stable than it used to be. And, and by the way, the path for if there's any Windows users out there, the pathfinding behavior will not be in Windows 13 that we're currently working on, but it will be in 14.
Yep, and we have Windows 14 release out as soon as we get the 13 finished.
Right, and then we'll have pathfinding in.
Yep. So we haven't forgotten about Windows users. We're just trying to get you a stable build first.
Right.
All right, what else do we have? I guess we definitely can open the floor now if you have any more questions about pathfinding. If you guys want to open the floor for a bunch of other ones. Any other questions you guys have about GameSalad or whatnot? I know many of you have been hunting down the questions to ask, so ask away.
Google Game Service cross-platform, right? These not, and you add Google Cloud Sync with the Google Leaderboard and Achievement Service.
So we have a feature request for the leaderboard and achievement. If you want that, go vote for it in the bugs.gamesalad.com. And the cloud services, we have talked about that, but there hasn't been enough feature request voting for that to seem to be a big feature. I think there might be an iCloud request already. So if you want the Google Cloud, go put in a feature request and vote. That's where you as a community can have your voice in helping kind of direct GameSalad's new features. Because right now I don't have any of that stuff on the schedule. So if you guys want it, go vote for it, and then we can start talking about putting it on the schedule. Also, the 14 build has the ARC fixes in it as well. So you'll notice the 90 build is very fast, but there may be a few issues here and there that didn't quite get pulled over. So if you guys find crashes, please submit a bug report to us. And the forums is now, you submit that at bugs.gamesalad.com. Much better place to submit that. And if you want to put 90 build, just put 14 as the version number, and we'll catch it, and QA will help me go through the bugs. You want to see if there's any more questions, Steve, while I type this up?
What kind of game performance improvements could we see with the new rendering engine? It's much faster.
Like a lot. Like if you set up if you go look the couple of past meetups, we actually had Brian, our graphics guy, talked about how to optimize your art, and I also talked about I think the last meetup. The idea here is we're taking your art and we're making sprite sheets at publish time out of all your art. So if your art can be very easily broken up into 64 by 64 squares, and we can throw away a lot of them because they're duplicates, then we will see drastic compression in memory, and you'll see drastic compression on disk. And the rendering is very fast. I don't have an exact time. I have to go do some benchmarks. I don't have any benchmarks for you. You will see noticeable improvements in load time and in render time.
You should probably benchmark it.
I'll just say, in the office, we have a game that you usually see, dinosaur that runs around. You see it on the GameSalad site sometimes. And we actually couldn't publish that with the old engine. It was too slow. Now it runs flawlessly, and we can publish it if we wanted to.
Would adding the ability to increment attributes one by putting plus and conditional out to be difficult to add? It actually kind of is a little difficult to add because our expression editor is actually run by Lua. We don't actually have our own expression parser. We basically turn the expression into Lua code and then have Lua evaluate it. And Lua doesn't have plus. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to go in and find plus in your expression, convert that to the equivalent Lua expression, and then run that through the parser. Or, and actually this is what I prefer to do, but obviously it would take a bit of time, is to use our own expression parser. So unfortunately, yeah, it's one of those things that it sounds really easy to do, but it's more difficult than you would think.
Can Game Center be tested via TestFlight? You know, I'm not sure, but I would assume so. Very familiar with TestFlight, and I haven't used it a lot.
What's the best network for Android? Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't know. There's the guys from Chart Booster on the forums. You can ask them their CPM. Also this build has AdMob in it. I forgot to mention that.
14, yes.
14 has AdMob. Though we have one bug that we'll try to get fixed next week. It doesn't work on iOS 8. We put all those features in, and it took us so long that Google updated AdMob and completely changed the SDK on it. So we have to go re-implement the SDK in our code.
At least for iOS.
Yeah, for iOS.
Yeah.
So we'll get it fixed, though. Don't worry, guys. We'll get it fixed for you. My question wasn't clear. Do you think that using this tool seems I don't know anything about this. So Francis is asking about using third-party tools to do stuff. We don't support third-party tools to manipulate stuff, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with that particular tool, so you'll have to give me a minute.
Do you need to be pro to vote? I don't think so.
I think you do, actually. Tan, do you have to be pro to vote in the bug?
I remember you do.
Yes, right now you do. We were talking about opening some votes for free users, but pro users will always have more votes than free, and right now they're the only ones to vote. So more incentive for you to pay for pro. And upgrade to pro, because not only does it help us pay the bills, but gives you more features.
Do any of you guys have an Apple Watch, I think?
Tan ordered one. He doesn't have it yet.
Oh, doesn't have it, so. Will the A1 engine have an effect on scene and app loading? Depending on your graphics, yes.
Yes, if
it's basically, we do our best to efficiently compress all your graphics, and if your graphics are such that it can be really efficiently compressed, you will have a noticeable speed up in scene and app loading.
Any chance to get a quick visual example of how to make graphics usable? I don't know if you want to do a quick visual one.
So if you want the fastest way, take a blue square, like 1,000, but make it 80,000. 80,000 by 80,000. If you put that on a new graphics engine, it's 64 by 64.
So basically, make sure your art can break up into 64 by 64
pixel squares.
Pixel areas.
Yeah. So no matter how large your art is, if we can break it into smaller 64 by 64 squares, and they're duplicated, we throw away the duplicates, keep the original, and we'll tile it for you.
So yeah, the two things are break them into block. If you can, break your art in blocks of 64, and if you want to, for some reason, want a complete image, minimize the difference between those blocks, and we'll find those. We'll find those same blocks.
Yeah. One of the hardest ones for us to do is like gradients. If you have a gradient image, you're going to have problems because none of the tiles are going to duplicate easily. Also, hand-painted art.
Yeah.
If you can take apart the parts that not, like if you have like a very, hand-painted art is really difficult for the render engine to handle. If you can find ways to composite that on the scene with smaller actors, that's a better way to go with the hand-painted art. I've seen some very pretty games using gorgeous hand-painted art, but it's really rough on the render engine.
Is there a way to implement Facebook with GameSalad?
Oh yeah, Facebook's in built. 14 has Facebook for iOS. Sorry about that. I should mention that in release notes. Yes.
No,
well,
you cannot build the website Facebook with GameSalad.
No. But you can post on Facebook and iOS, and I will get Android in after I get 13 out the door. But yeah, you won't be able to post. Right now it's just post. We will expand Facebook after that, because there's a lot of things Facebook can do. But you got to remember, we got to do it cross-platform, and that's not always easy to do.
It's Plays Together exclusive to GameSalad now. I noticed you guys stopped supporting Corona. Yes, Plays Together is exclusive to GameSalad.
We now, yes, if you go look at, there's press releases out there, we officially own Plays Together.
Yeah.
All right, looks like what I want to say yearly. Cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, yearly is less expensive, but it's a bigger hit on the pocketbook at once. So, what's easier for you?
Just saw notes on the feature request. Disregard. We got that one. Sorry, I'm catching up.
Yeah, we've hit the end so far.
Oh, I'm still reading. Sorry, yeah. I was answering questions. Okay.
Here we go. Consistently multi-line.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to fix. Yes, but that control is custom and doesn't know how to handle multi-line, so I have to go in and rewrite it. Yes, I like to fix that. When, I'm not sure, but yes, I like to get around to fixing that.
Actually, there's the same issue on Windows, I believe. It's a single line, and it's kind of annoying if you have a. I think it actually might be a little easier on Windows, but it is also a custom control, which is a pain.
Yeah, we don't know how to change that to more like a text editor style.
Yeah, the problem is that
that don't work.
The problem is the actual editor tokenizes things.
Yeah.
And it doesn't understand how to take strings, certain strings to token, and if it doesn't catch them as tokenized, then it doesn't save out the file correctly.
Yeah, that's where the flip is. We may want to make it more like it.
Yeah, we may just need that. Yeah, we may have to do some things. And at one point, I had written a Bison Flex parser for our expression editor, and then I found out the limits of our expression is, and no one would actually tell me the limits of the language. Yeah. It's like whatever Lua does, which is a terrible. Yeah, that doesn't always work well.
Yeah. Any idea when the app file size went up with the last release?
No, I'm not
Did the last
sure.
release have the new engine?
No.
Okay,
I don't know. Someone just send us a support ticket and I'll take care of it. I'm sorry, I've just been knee deep in ARC.
Sub question: When was the last time you upgraded? Because if you have been using the RSPs all along, then it's one thing we don't know about it. If you suddenly jump from an old version to the RSPs, you might be discovering some of our image library.
Yes, because if the old one, if you use tiny image or things that compress PNGs, you'll see a jump because we don't use that anymore. We actually decompress them for faster loading. And you can also have, if you want more information on that, there's a meetup talk that's on the YouTube channel about our new loading system and why it's faster and why we had to go to uncompressed images.
Editing tags at runtime.
Yeah, that's another thing that needs to happen. So so there's a lot of weird things that should work right that don't in our code that I'm still working out. One of them a while back was making an actor invisible. That was actually a whole pain in the butt to do. So the tags are actually stored as strings, and yeah, somebody should put a feature request in for that, because yeah, I want to fix that too. I'll put a feature request in. If you guys go vote for that, we can. If you vote that higher than the polygon collision, we'll do that first. Right now, custom polygon collision is the most top-rated feature request after RevMob, which we just
No, we are AdMob. Yeah, they all sound the same. Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's, custom collision shapes is definitely one that would be nice to get in. Although that's one of the ones where it sounds complex and it is complex. Because we have to basically, although the engine, we use Box 2D as our physics engine, and it does support custom collision shapes. Actually, creating the UI, it turns out, is actually a little tricky to do, because you have to be able to define those shapes, and getting a nice clean UI to do that is not trivial.
Gosh, I'm so terrible with names. Joachim talked about the text being blurry. Yes, we were actually talking about the state. So this also, 14, introduces a new way of loading fonts, which is technically will allow us to do custom fonts. I was talking about on the forums earlier today. The engine supports custom fonts, but creators don't support custom fonts. So we're just going to have to wait for a bit. But the blurriness is actually a problem with the new font rendering code, which I'm going to have another discussion with our graphics guy, and all this stuff will be fixed next week after I get all the arguments. But yeah, so if you see those kind of things, please submit bugs so I can keep track of them in the bug database. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Someone
I was just going to say with custom fonts, yeah, it's technically we've got the ability to do it. We just need to get a UI in there, so you could actually add your fonts.
Yeah, and then publishing needs to be able to handle it.
Publishing needs to be able to handle it and whatnot. So there's some logistical things there, but it's really, really close.
Yep. If Apple makes a TV platform developers, do we have to wait some time and put in a feature request, or is it going to be up ASAP? So yeah, it depends. Fire TV, there are other circumstances that kind of push that forward. We evaluate.
It really depends on how different they make it from everything else.
Yeah, so if it's an easy thing for us to go to, I'm more willing to do it. If it's hard, we rather not unless there's a really viable thing. Like the Apple Watch, for example, right? I looked at the SDK twice. CEO asked me, what do you think? So I actually did a tech evaluation of it twice. Both times came back the same thing. Not really designed for games, not really appropriate for GameSalad. Right? So if Apple, by waves the magic wand, says, hey, now you can publish to Apple TV, same thing. I'll evaluate it. If it's something that looks like it's easy to do, then we'll do it. If it's not, then you guys have to put a feature request in for it.
Custom fonts. You do pixel fonts.
No, we're only going to support custom TTFs. Sorry.
If you want a pixel font, make a
TTF that's a pixel font. Could you send a screenshot of an example of how to composite image, let's say, to get the potential? So the easiest way to do this is to do this. Take, God, this is going to be.
I'm trying to do something.
Yeah. So we have a meetup video all about this. We have a whole talk about this. But the simplest example is if you have a giant solid color blue square. The algorithm will go through your entire blue square, making 64 by 64 tiles. First, it'll make a 64 by 64 tile on the top left. Then it'll take another one. It'll compare them. If they're the same, it throws out the second one and keeps going. And so you'll notice this will ultimately go through the entire thing and find out, oh, I only need one 64 square tile to actually recreate this at runtime. So it will automatically retile that 164 by 64 pixel square across the whole thing to make your 1000 by 1000, or in this case 512 by 512 image. So in practice, you'll probably see that it'll be more than just 164 by 64 square. But the idea here is just like an artist would break things up into a, crap, I just lost the term. Thank you. We're doing the same thing at runtime. Build time, sorry, build time. In this case, publish time. And you already answered about the pixel fonts, make them true type. Yes. Is there any way to show IAP prices to users in a local currency deal? We fixed. Oh, we had a couple things. Yeah, that's.
IAP prices in the purchase table. The name of the product and the cost are localized by the service provider.
Yeah.
So the price isn't a number; it's a string, and that string should be localized to the value to whatever the user's localization.
It's off the store sense though, right? So you'd have to be in that country to see it. So if you're in America, you're not going to be able to see the localization. You have to go to like Italy if you want to see the Italy store price.
Yeah. There may be a way to get around that by changing the location of your tablet if it supports that. If it doesn't, you just have to all you should do is value that's stored in the purchase table and show that, and don't try to modify it at all. Just show whatever that string is, and the store will guarantee that it will be the correct number in that person's location for whatever currency they have. And it will, if there's a comma and period switch that needs to be done, it will do that for you. So don't try to manipulate the price value that's coming in the purchase table at all. Just show what's in there, and it will be localized.
Yep, Apple will take care of it for you.
Yeah, Apple or Google.
Matthew's asking about Graphene. When is the Graphene SDK beta likely to come out? I don't know. When it comes out, it'll come out.
Yeah, no idea.
Is there any GameSalad stuff for the summer, like contests? Have you any contests coming up, Tan, or any plans?
Last that I know of, I really don't know.
We always have the monthly game, the game of the month, though.
Yeah, there's always the game. We haven't had any game jams planned as of yet, so we probably like to get something out going. If you have anything, any like particular contest you'd like us to help or support, go for it. And also, just there are game jams going on all over the world nowadays. Teams, all parts of the year, teams. So go for a game jam. So.
One thing I will say about the localization. Sorry, you done? Can or Jimmy more about that?
Go ahead. I was going to show.
Well, Hannah looks it up. We are planning on 14 to put in finally, so you can query the device to ask, is this an iOS device? What model is it? What version? Anywhere you do country code, language code, model, and OS, and I think maybe version. I can't remember. That's what our base standard is for what you'll be able to query. It'll be a device attribute. We don't have it in yet.
It's close.
It's close. Look for it in a future nightly build. I'm sure. Yes. So I actually was talking to a Rabbits guy, Mike. Mick. Yes. So we won't be able to do it per actor. The way the new graphics rendering system works, it just can't do it per actor, but we can do it globally. So there's an idea. It's called linear filtering or point filtering on texture, and that's what's smoothing it out. We use linear. All we have to do is change the graphics to point, and your entire game will not try to smooth out any of the actors. And the fonts will still be smooth. We talked about that too. So best thing for that, put a feature request in, and vote it up. Oh, you got a little thing on here, Ken?
Yeah, so to give you an idea of what's going to happen, here, I got...
Make sure you speak up so
move closer.
And then so you can hear you.
All right, so kind of an example of what's happening. I'm making a weird little background thing real quick. So this is a 512 by 512 texture. Each of those blocks is 64 by 64. And if you notice, all the blocks are kind of uniform. And unconsciously, my color scheme seems to be inspired by Minecraft. But the idea is that this 512 by 512 image in our system will be stored as
4 little boxes.
4 textures. Yeah.
Yep, 4 textures.
Green ones and a brown one.
Yep. So you can imagine
green, the brown, and the white.
Yep, and you can imagine the savings you're gonna have this. No matter how large you keep making this bigger, well, you're just gonna get that many squares. 4, 3, 4. 4. I can't count.
So that's the idea. And
Green, yeah.
so also knowing that this is going to happen, instead of doing something like making this big image, you may also, or actually, let's say, I can go make a carrot. Let's see here. Let's make a tree here. Draw a tree.
How good is your art skills, Pan?
There, programmer tree.
Okay, programmer tree. Yay!
Possibly programmer mushroom. So instead of doing this over and over again, or like if you only have a few trees, it may also make sense for you to just make a tree and put it in there as an actor instead of having a pre-composed forest of trees. And it really just depends on how you want to do your game. But in this case, it would just increase to an extra texture. So it does help with that thing. But
so imagine that the tree was, let's say, red, and then there were also red trees on the other squares. Instead of having, a square that's a black-brown square and another square that's a black-brown square with a tree on it, you can decomposite those so that you just have a square that's a black-brown square, and then have a square that's a tree on a clear background, and at runtime you composite those together by putting them on the same location. And so that way that's a lot more efficient than having 2 separate images, multiple images that you would need if you just smashed everything together as one flat image.
Yeah. Also, this works with tiling. So if you wanted to tile an actor as well, you would take that 64-bit square, create the main square, and then tile that square. So you can get even more efficient that way.
So yeah, imagine another thing on optimization. Imagine if this was like, okay, ignore the fact that it's smiley face. Imagine it's like a cave or something. But instead of making a giant image full of these squares in a cave, because what's going to happen is create an extra set of, basically this is going to create an extra set of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different tiles unnecessarily because you composited it on this image. Get rid of that, have the image separate. This becomes 4 tiles. This now can still efficiently break up into the same 5 tiles. And all you need to do is just in-game use the actors to put this on top. And that saves you a lot of space instead of having, or that'll save you a lot of graphics memory.
So Francis is saying it brings us closer to tile sets. Yeah, basically we're doing like automatic tile sets for you.
So yeah, if you do everything in 64 by 64, you're getting this big memory advantage of tile sets. You don't have the rendering or the game time rendering advantage of tile sets, but that's another thing.
Yeah, but we'll also do things too. Like we store these things called megatextures, and we'll scale up megatextures size depending on how much available video RAM the machine has. So on like a Mac, you'll see better performance because there'll be larger textures you can make, and versus like an iPhone or Android. If the new graphics engine is essentially tile-based now, would it be possible to make the engine import tile map straight from the tile editor? I have to, and so we can basically asking, can you do custom tile sets yourself? I don't know if the engine can handle. We could probably make a descriptive language so you could import the sets by yourself. However, I'm not sure if you would get any more advantage over it because we might be able to beat you on efficiency, seeing that we can take the whole breadth of the project at once. I'll talk to our graphics guy and see what the feasibility of that is, but you might try and see how well the automatic one works, and if it doesn't work well enough, give us some examples where like, hey, I can make this style snap better by doing this. Yeah. And at that point, we might do something in GameSalad where you can import that, and then we just make that noted. Does one scene game essentially mean it would be memory cache for free comparison to a game with multiple scenes? So the way it works is, yes, we try to load, there's no concept of preloaded versus non-preloaded tile art anymore. Everything is loaded as much as it can into 4 mega textures. So if your entire game will fit into 4 mega textures in these 64 by 64 by squares, you will never have to load from disk ever in the entire game. So if you switch...
So I don't know if Brian ever implemented this, but I did push him for the idea of preload would put anything that was marked preload would come first in the mega textures.
I don't know if he did that or not, but I don't think you get any gain.
Well, the gain being that, so the drawback in the mega textures is something you want to keep in mind.
You mean like a streaming where like it doesn't, we have to wait for all the load?
Yeah, it's basically if you are using more graphics memory than all of the measured textures we provide you combined, there will be large amounts of swapping.
Yes.
What happens is in our old system, each individual image was kind of think of it as a load block, a chunk of load time. And so if you like, oh, well, I lost this image, then you lost that small chunk of load time. What we're doing as an optimization is taking up all of your images at once and creating one big quick load. But that also means that if your images don't fit into all those big blocks that we're loading, we have to form a completely new block and load it up, which means that, you just lost, like, instead of losing like 5, like 1 meg of image you loaded, you're going to have to reload all 4 or 8 or however big your mega texture.
Yeah. If it doesn't fit into all of it, we'll dump it between scenes and reload everything for that scene. Yeah. But you will see horrible performance if we have to start swapping out the disk.
Yeah.
That will clearly, if you have a giant image that can't be broken up by tiles, and you'll just watch your framing drop.
So the upshot is definitely tested in the viewer do the mega texture thing.
Yes.
Definitely tested the viewer because it's going to be device sensitive. iOS should be fine. Like if you test on one iOS device,
right now you only test on the Android device. We're currently redoing the iOS viewer, so right now it's going to be unavailable for a few weeks. But you can still publish. You can still publish to iOS and try it.
Yeah. So make sure you test on device for that. That's going to be the one limitation this provides is that because we're doing a lot of batching for you, the batches can come back to bite you.
Okay, again, we have a question. Speaking of textures, is the max texture size going to be upped? So, I'm assuming you're talking about importing in the creator.
Yeah, probably not because.
Probably not. We haven't really found a need for someone.
Well, it's because it's related to the max texture size and the minimum price is 40.
Yeah. There's issues with us going higher into the 4,000 range. There are some devices that just will not support that. And you could get into some situations where we can't break it up, and then you're trying to render something that's impossible to render on device.
That also speaks to the fact that what we're doing with all the mega textures, this is where composing your image costs a lot more than.
If you want a 4,000 by 4,000 image, you really should just compose it up to 2,000s. And I know sometimes it's hard with the way the lighting tools work, but yeah, that's a better way of going with it. It would be, for example. We could play like some things like max up the texture, but not really the right way of going about it. You really should composite or tile, create your background out of tiles and other things. Dropping giant images in is not a good way to design your art.
Also remember the concept of mega texture as well. On the lower end devices, the max texture size is probably also going to be similar to our mega texture size, which means you wasted a whole mega texture for your background.
Yeah, and you could have a problem where it tries to go across 2 mega textures. You could have tiles in 2 sets, and that requires you to break the batch on drawing, which causes you to lose frame rate. We also, the mega textures, try to max. The mega textures will try to draw as much art as they can. They'll take the max texture size. Some devices that may be 512 by 512, some that may be 4,000 by 4,000. So smaller, but we try to do the best we can to scale that, but smaller, low-power devices, you'll probably.
Yeah, that's why I think the way our textures are there. So right now, 2048 is probably is it 1024 or 2048 that are max right now? That's basically the max texture size.
Matthew's asking, is there any way to send, or in the future going to send push notifications? Yeah, we have that on the list of the roadmap someplace.
Yeah, currently it's not. That's something we'll be adding to the network behaviors in the Place Together system.
And we've also talked about doing iOS and Android push notifications as well.
Yeah, we've talked about that too. Yeah, definitely not now, and definitely yes in the future. We just don't know when.
Yeah, still working on it. Again, when we implement it, we have to go across all the platforms, not just one platform.
Which is why Place Together will probably come first, because that is multi-platform.
Yeah. We're asking how big is the mega texture? It is a subset of the size of your video memory and the max texture size of the device. So it's dependent per device. We try to maximize it without exploding your video memory. So we try to use as much video memory as we can to put as much as we can in the memory.
Yeah.
I know I could get the equation out. We're still tweaking the equation, but we're trying to do it as most efficiently as possible.
The nice thing is, if you do have to compose your images ahead of time just to save actors, if you make sure you do it in 64 by 64 blocks and reuse those blocks, that should save you some memory.
So Mick asks, you kept mentioning that new graphic engine isn't ideal for hand-painted large images without a lot of gradients. Does that mean that for games such as point and click, that means that they're actually run worse than the previous engine? Yeah, it's a possibility. Yes, you could have an issue where your game actually runs worse.
So if you're doing your point and click where everything is all in one image, that's going to be a problem. It should be okay if you're composing your images out of lots of small images.
Yes, if you break them out into small images and then put like a big blue background on the back, that would be much, much faster. Then, yeah, like...
Or you have your small images so that, they take up the screen once they're all composited together. That's fine too. It's not like you have, your games now have to have solid backgrounds. It's just that you need to be a little bit more thoughtful about the efficiency, I guess you could say, of your images than previously. You have to put a little bit more thought into it and think, how complex is this image visually, and how can can I do anything to simplify it as far as images go, not necessarily the final image that the user sees on the screen.
Yeah, so you could have situations, say you have like 2,000 by 2,000 point lit photograph. Well, we break it up into tiles, and maybe that's the only one you have, and that would just take up an entire mega texture. And we could load per scene. So if it happens, watch the memory on the viewer. We'll try to add some more metrics to those when we can. But yeah, what can happen is one of those big textures can fill up your entire mega texture, and you only get 4. And then once you fill up 4, we start swapping the disk, and that's when you start seeing performance loss. And I have a question about how big the mega textures are on iOS. I don't remember the numbers. I can't remember. It depends actually, because iOS 4 is actually a pretty low power device, and that actually gives you a much smaller mega texture and max texture size than like the iPhone 5 and 5S. So I don't unfortunately have the numbers with me.
I think in terms of deprecation, haven't we hit the point where 4 aren't supported anymore?
No, we still support.
No, I meant like.
Oh, the 4, yeah, I don't think we support the 4. I think we support the 4S, which still is a low power device too. 4S is actually not that good for graphic return rate. It's actually pretty low power. 5 is much, much, much better. And Android, well, it's just all kinds of problems.
Yeah, Android's all over the place.
All right, what do you have for polls? Any more polls, Tan?
They've been going.
They've been going?
Yeah. Google Play leaderboards. Plans, yes, but we just don't know when.
Yep, if you want that to come happen, go get people to vote higher than custom polygon shapes.
Yeah.
I know.
Google Play leaderboards. What else? What other features do we?
I don't know. I'm gonna look them up right now. Let's see. I have a bunch in here. Let's see. Yeah. We actually just recently reorganized them so we could find them easier. On Creator, the most voted one is polygon collision support, followed by some memory cleanup we were gonna do in 14. Yeah, take a look at memory leaks in 14 on the engine. 14s we're gonna start optimizing the engine for memory usage. So if you guys we fixed a couple issues already, but if you find more, let us know. So on the Macintosh side, we have 31 votes for polygon collision, 24 for cleaning up the engine memory, and then 23 for custom fonts, and then 15 for joints, which is actually more of an engine request, but still needs to have creator support. But if you go to the engine side, there's 25 votes for Chartboost reward video ads, and number 2 with 18 votes is Google Game Services, which is like leaderboards and achievements.
Yeah.
And then after that is the expansion file, so that you can have games over 50 megs on Android. And then after that is Windows 8. So if you go to bugs.gamesalad.com, you can see the active top voted feature requests. Bugzilla doesn't consider everything's a bug to Bugzilla, so they say bugs, but they're really feature requests. You'll see we have everything labeled feature requests, that are feature requests, and things that are bugs are bugs.
Where can we get a GameSalad t-shirt? Where can they get a GameSalad t-shirt?
I posted a link to the GameSalad Cafe Press site.
I keep forgetting we have a cafe press.
Yeah, we don't really meet. The last time I updated it was probably like a year ago, and that was to get the onesie out there for someone.
So we have. I'm sorry.
But yeah, basically we have the awesome shirt that Alan's wearing is not available. We don't have those shirt designs up, or I don't have access to the design when I made the store. So
that's what we think of some t-shirts for meetups. You come in person.
Let's see. Is there some sort of guide on how to use the new pathfinding behavior? Not at the moment. I will be writing one up, and we will be posting it.
Questions though, ask now, because Steve's right here, and you can ask him right now.
Yeah. Yeah. The kind of the tricky, I think the thing is actually how the hex map is laid out, because as you can see there, the difference between, when you saw the hex map, it was like a lot skinnier, and the blocking hexes weren't contiguous; they were kind of spread out, as opposed to what they would look like when they're on the grid map. And I need to show how the hex map is generated from the grid. So if you're interested in making like a war game or something else that uses hex connectivity,
Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Pathfinding.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that's actually kind of the trickiest part of it. Hopefully, the rest of it, once you play around with it a little bit, it will be fairly straightforward. But yeah, I will be writing up a book page to kind of explain how to use the pathfinding behavior.
And it's all kinds of like resourcing or electricity, like try to find the path, or educational games.
Yeah. Water in the way.
Yeah, water. Yeah.
And this thing swims.
You may want to also look into for your demo make is there a way to make the loop version of loop behavior faster than per frame?
Actually, Jonathan found out why the thing's rolling slow. It's actually the text behavior.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, we need to go optimize. That's probably some custom blocks. He's found a bug. I got another question there for you, Steve.
Let's see what we got here. How do you link the table part to your in-game map? The table is the in-game map. So basically, if you look on the, I share my screen here.
As soon as it pulls over here, we can. Let us know when you're ready and cancel the poll.
Oh,
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't share my screen until the poll is out.
There you go. All right. Share your screen.
And I need to be made presenter again?
I can do that. Done. There you go.
Okay. Show my screen. Okay. So we look over here. Hopefully this is, yay. Okay. So I got this actor here. We actually open up a scene here. You can see this actor in the upper left.
Oh, that might be a weird bug. Oh, that's some weird bug there.
Wait, get rid of that. Oh, this is.
The viewers.
Is
I think.
this open the wrong?
So the viewer overlays on there.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay, I'm seeing my own screen or something like that. Well, anywho, so there's this actor here called Grid Spawner, and all that does is you can see here. First of all, it just looks for it's got an initialize flag. If it says false, then it goes through and create the map, and then it sets the initialize flag to true. Why this isn't showing up on here, I don't know.
We need to fix those bugs.
Yeah.
Again, this is an alley build. We literally
this is an alley build. There's bugs in it. But anywho, so all I do is I'm in a loop here, and I'm counting over. Since I know my grid is 10 by 10, I know I've got 100 tiles. So I just loop over a tile count, starting out from 0. As you can see over here, tile count starts out at 0, and I go until it reaches 100, or actually technically 99. So it's 0 to 99. And then I just do a spawn actor, and the actor is the grid tile, which is just look over here, grid tile here, just a square. And what I do is actually kind of interesting. I don't actually spawn the grid tile at its XY location on the screen. What I do is I spawn it at an X to Y location that is the map coordinate. So, for instance, the map tile that coordinates of row 1, column 1 will be spawned at the XY position 1, 1. And then if we actually go and look at the tile itself, it has an initialization step here called reposition or behavior for reposition tile. And all that does, and unfortunately the attributes, you can't see the attributes, but basically all that does is it takes its own position, it sets that in this my row and my column. So for instance, it says take my position Y and set that to my column, and then take my position X and set that to my row. And so now it knows what map coordinate it corresponds to. So now it knows that, hey, I'm map row column 1, 1, or map column 2, 1, or whatever. And then it goes and it says, okay, well now take that value, my column 1, and actually compute the screen location that I need to be in. So for instance, in this particular case, it's my column. Since that's 1 based, I subtract 1, multiply it times the width of the actor itself, and then add 240 to kind of center on the screen for the X location. And same similar kind of thing for Y. So the way I've got it set up is basically I spawn the actor at an XY location that's the map coordinate. And then when that actor spawns, it reads its location in, sets its my map coordinate locally, and then repositions itself based on that. And that's kind of how the maps are generated. And the hex one is a little bit more complicated than that, because on hex maps you have to worry about whether you're in an even row or an odd row, because the even rows are actually shifted half step to the right, which generates the hex bubble. So it actually has detection saying, is my row even, then do this thing. If it's odd, then do this thing. But it's effectively the same thing. And once this gets posted, you'll be able to download it and check out how it's generated. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, you can contact me or ask another question.
Yeah. So Phil has more questions about our new rendering edition. So think about it this way. So you don't need to break up your images yourself into 64 by 64 pixel tiles. We're doing that for you. Take a look at your art and pretend you're the computer trying to square, if you want to put this in Photoshop and make a 64 by 64 pixel grid, and then look at the tiles. And if they are similar, we're going to throw those out. Or actually, they're exact in this case. We don't do similar because we're going to give you, we're not going to lose detail or whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe later, but if they're exact, we're going to throw them out. So you don't need to break your art into 64 by 64 bits, but if your art can be easily, at publish time, broken into those kind of dimensions and compartmentalized, we'll do it for you and you'll gain speed that way. So it may be an issue where you just need to try it. Like, try out your image, see if it runs faster. If it doesn't, we can help you in the forums try and break it up.
So
there you go. Tan's got another example.
So I was taking your example of your ads for games. I'm assuming it's like a big page with a bunch of different ads on it. So the idea is, instead of making this one big image, think of it as your Photoshop layers, and you just actually just make an actor for each of these layers. So this big yellow section down into one small 64 by 64 tile because it's all the same. Or if you have just like a large image with a lot of similar things, that will get broken down appropriately. And then each of these sections can be their own thing. So kind of think in terms of layers. Think in terms of like groups of things that are an object. Instead of putting it all on the image at once, make them so that you can break them up into smaller things. As for your book even though it's going to be a big image that takes up your whole texture, if you're only page flipping, you're only going to show one image at a time. It's not a big deal.
It's probably a big deal.
And then now I'm going to use between back to.
Okay, so Matthew's talking about these kind of problems. So usually what happens with things being frozen in GameStop, there's a few issues where the current Naughty build has some issues with Arch still. But usually what you're happening when you get freeze, you see the beach ball, is technically the main thread blocks, but what's happening is sometimes in GameSalad in the past, there's a few places where you can do things continuously, and you'll see literally the menu, the amount of memory that GameSalad uses just spikes up and eats all your system memory. And what happens at that point is Apple starts paging your memory off disk. Just like we talked about the manufacturer being paged off disk, OSs will start paging your memory off disk, and you'll start seeing drastic slowdowns and freezes because you're waiting on file I/O. This is what I'm saying. One of the things I need to do before I release a stable build is go through and clean out some of those memory leaks so that it's faster. But the best way is if you can give us steps like, I click this, I click that, I click this, and then I'm frozen. If we can reproduce it here, I can put it in the debugger and figure out what's going on. But usually freezes or hangs, if it happens after a while, are usually because you're using too much memory in the system memory. And if you only have 2 gigs or 4 gigs, that could be a problem. But I do want to try to address those issues. There are some situations right now where you can actually have some deadlocks that hang Creator. But if you're running those situations, please just give us steps for I do the following and this hangs, and give us some specs on your computer, and we'll try to reproduce it here in the office and try to fix it. Sorry, Rick.
There was a question about how the individual cells of the map were generated. So just real quick here. So basically, as I said before, when the cell is spawned, it figures out what row and column it corresponds to on the map, and then I just have a changed style image for map. And all it does is simply it looks at the map, and then since it knows what row and column it is, it gets that map value, and then simply compares to what things it knows. So it knows that if it's a negative value, it needs to set itself to black, and if it's 0, it needs to set itself to green, and if it's greater than 0, it needs to set itself to brown. So it's pretty kind of straightforward stuff. So nothing complex there. It's just a matter of knowing which map cell it corresponds to, and then after that you can, get all the information, set yourself up. So it's an initialization thing. We actually talked about this. We were discussing this earlier. Kind of the reason I did this way is because when you spawn an actor, you can't actually change any of its attributes. The spawner can't change setting any attributes on the spawnee. So I'm actually kind of getting around that by basically using its initial position as the information it needs to know to initialize itself. We've actually talked about changing that behavior so that when you spawn an actor, you'll be able to set its initial conditions. So for instance, when I spawn this, I could have said, the spawned actor is my row equals 1, 1, and 1, and the spawned actor is my column equals 10. But that's something that is not in the schedule, or it's just something that was kind of loosely discussed earlier.
So go for you, Tan. Scott asked there.
So.
Okay, what he's asking.
So basically, we don't, mostly because we're so busy making the features.
Do you want to repeat his question?
Oh.
That's what it is.
Yes. On social media, can you guys do a bit more than featured game of the month and blog post? So we don't, partly because we're so busy developing that we don't have time as much to do screenshots and things like that, or new videos. That's kind of where the reason why we even have meetup videos right now is because we're doing videos while we happen to be doing this meetup, which is what we can spend, so we can take the time to do that. Actually, until we get more bandwidth to do better, or more bandwidth to dedicate towards tutorials, if you want a particular kind of tutorial, it might be a good meetup subject. So suggest it to us, to the group, and see if anyone either wants to run through that kind of game, or whether we might have a template that we can get Code Monkey to talk you through.
Yeah, I see all kinds of stuff. Like Armeline has a bunch of them, Sock has a bunch of them on the forums, GameSalad Guru has a bunch on there, Brain puts a bunch on there. Like, you guys have all these fantastic long thread posts about really cool things to do and help out users. These are great topics for talks. Because I bet you if their thread post is like 20 users, there are probably 20 users who are willing to come to a meetup and talk to you about these subjects. And I am always looking for people to present at these meetup groups.
So we probably could go and actually put some meetup ones on social media. We put them on YouTube, but we don't like.
Oh yeah, this meetup are actually gonna be more. You'll get an email we're hoping you'll get an email in 2 days with a link to the video of this meetup.
Yeah. Let's see. We have a question about pathfinding again. So what about more complex map tile sets? You can have an impassable tile that is a wall, table, body, water. So in the demo, I just used -1 as a blocking tile, but really any negative number is considered blocking. So you can have -1 is a wall, -2 is a table, -3 is a body of water. And as far as pathfinding goes, they all block movement, but then you can use those values to actually display a different image. So hopefully that makes sense.
So you got going back to our Phil's talking about a photo. Yeah, photos will not compressible in the whole 64 by 64.
You get the idea.
But you kind of get the idea. If you can if there's 2 photos and the rest of it's all green, then you're just gonna then you only have to delete the cost of the photos.
Right. The pro user number increasing. I don't know.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Are we having more?
Yes, we do. We're getting more and more pro users.
Oh yes.
We want even more because it's not quite enough for me yet. But yes, we do have more pro users.
Yeah. The more pro users, the more we can hire developers, the more features you can have.
We're actually seeing a lot of good results from the introducing the monthly billing, because that was a big impediment for a lot of users who couldn't couldn't pay $2.99 all at once. So giving them the option to pay it monthly is helped a lot.
Yeah, and we're trying to add more value to being a pro member, and actually like a value over the span of the time you have pro, not just the fact that you can publish, like this new pathfinding behavior and access to these new builds sooner, and that kind of stuff. Like I said, it's great you guys came. Like this meetup is the biggest attendance we have for any meetup. I think we hit almost 35. I have to go look at the numbers after the meetup to find out how many actually attended, but we were like 35 users at one point. So thank you all for coming. Like
very much.
We can do the math right. It might be possible to tie your numbers to like a gradient along the blue to brown axis, so that the higher the number, the higher the value, the darker the color gets. Then you can build like a whole map like thing.
So Roland's asking, what does the engine do when you call change scene from pause scene? Does it unload the previous scene plus the pause scene, and when it swaps to a new scene? I have to go ask our graphics guy again, Brian. I can't remember to hang on to the tiles as long as it can, but I believe it between scenes, it will dump the tile set, assuming that the next scene.
Well, the pause scene.
But the pause scene, I believe, is still. I don't think it dumps tiles between pause scenes.
It shouldn't. What it worst. So this is probably an optimization. I don't think it does this, but we might need to look for an optimization where it takes a snapshot of your current screen and saves that as a texture, and then renders a new one. Because I can see dumping, basically having too much in memory for if you have 2 scenes at once.
Yeah, you have to probably try it. I'll double check tomorrow, but it should do the smart route.
Yeah, I think part of it is make your pause scenes small too. Don't make them. They're pause scenes. They're not meant to be giant. They're not meant to be a whole new game.
Yeah, but basically, like, it tries to load everything it can to the mega textures. Once they're full, they're full. But if there's room, it'll try to do that. And the idea is that when you're trying to change scenes, if it needs to free up memory, it'll dump the entire tile set of a scene to load the next scene. So if you do have a game that will not fit fully in memory in the mega textures, it'll do the smart thing and dump a tile set per scene. So you aren't trying to do weird. You're not trying to load images and stuff you're not actually using.
This poll result is interesting because I remember in-app purchase used to be a much smaller.
Yeah. Well, also there's Fire TV, right? Fire TV, you can't do ads. How do I fix the bug that? Okay, how do I fix the bug that the more I use GameSalad store get? You need us to open a support ticket with us, Matthew. The problem is it can be very computer specific. Oh, on Mac, okay, on Mac 13.7. Okay, 13.7 beta. You can't fix. You need to move to the RC. The 13.7 non-RC uses garbage collection. The garbage collector on Mac is horrible.
Got broken when they upgraded the OS.
Yes, it never was good, and they broke it worse in Yosemite. And that will never get fixed. Apple has deprecated the garbage collector and is actually aggressively making us move. So the RC build uses ARC. So if you're having problems with the freezes on 13.7, move to the RC build, which is available for all free users. and you won't see those kind of hangs anymore. Yep, and he said using Yosemite. Yep, and that's exactly why you're having the freezes, because the garbage collector is causing problems with your system. So go ahead and upgrade the RC. You should see all those problems disappear. And hopefully next week we'll have a stable build.
Yes.
If I don't find another ton of bugs hiding around the corner. Yes, doesn't like trying to move to an entirely new one. The RC has one bug in it. Right now, I only have, unless someone can find more bugs for it, the RC has one bug. We have release notes. You can go look, Matthew, if you're kind of scared of it. There's only one bug, and it has to do with graphical. It's not actually a crash, and it has to do with expanding and collapsing else behaviors. It's purely graphical. It's not actually a physical or logical issue that will stop you with games. And many of the forum users here use it on a daily basis. They can speak to their own experiences with it. But right now, the RC is pretty stable.
I remember the version of GameSalad that I was using for the Pathfinding demo is not the RC. This is sorry, this is the 14 nightly build. So all the problems you're seeing with like stuff not showing up on my site is not actually in the RC. This is a unstable build.
Yeah, that's the nightly build, which is much it's very unstable.
Yeah, but it does have Pathfinding.
It does have Pathfinding, yeah. I got a question about the RC file size being bigger. Just open a support ticket with me, with us, and send me an app built with the one that's got a smaller file size and with the nearest file size, and I'll dip it and figure out what's grown.
So the easy thing, send us, when you upload your game to publish it, you're on a page where you manage your game, send us a link to that game. We can get the game and we can see the app.
I'd rather have the publish app, though, because it's going to be...
No, the publish app can download from that.
Oh, yeah, okay, you can do that, too. Yeah, I need to do two different versions. Like, yeah, publish one with the old version, publish one with the new version, send me the two links, and we'll take a look at it and see what's different. I actually don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go look. Yeah, and Ted says the RC is fully usable for serious development. I've done that in response. Send me a message with the support ticket, and I'll take care of it. It's probably an issue of me getting backlogged. So if you guys didn't know, I'm the one who takes care of all the support tickets that our CS guy can't handle. Like, things are really developer-specific. And unfortunately, I've been blocked by RC, or not the RC, I've been blocked by the art build for like 3 weeks. So I'm like super backlogged on tickets. I think today I got to go clearing out like 2. So I apologize for taking so long to get back to you. And sometimes tickets fall off the radar, and I apologize for that. Just keep nagging me. You can always reopen the ticket as a follow-up ticket, and you can just say, hey, I'd like to have this go to Black Cloak GS. But do be aware, sometimes it does take me like a week or 2 to get back sometimes. Just keep nagging me. Just keep nagging me, and I'll get to it. Great, there's a bug. I'll take a look at it tomorrow. I'll put this bug on my list to go look at tomorrow. I may have QA take a look at it first if they have found anything. Yeah, I'll have QA. This just fell through the cracks. I apologize for that. I'll have QA take a look at the bug tomorrow, and we'll try to figure out what's going on. Sorry about that. All right. Oh, okay, can you show? So here's an interesting question. So while we're talking about the meetup, so I normally have this one Thursday because there's a meetup here in Austin. If you didn't know, Austin has like more meetups, I swear, than like San Francisco possibly. It is really insane here. And apparently the laws fall in the first week. So this week alone, there's a Linux meetup, there's the IGDA meetup, there's a iPhone mobile game development meetup. So it's very hard to pick days. And I also know, and I know there's a lot of guys, and I thank you guys who are in Europe and the guys in Australia for showing up because I know it's really late there. So one option I have had thought is to move it to a Friday. Usually you don't do that historically because most people don't want to come to a meetup on Friday in person. But I understand there are a lot of you guys in Houston. There's a lot of you guys in San Antonio. There's a bunch in Dallas. And that might, I don't know if that would make it easier for you guys. Maybe you can put that question, Dan, if we had it on Friday, if people will show up. And possibly you'd be willing to stay up later because it's not a work day.
I personally wanted to speak to it Friday because I'm not showing up.
See?
Yeah,
so yeah, these problems.
I got my game here.
Yeah, so you see, that's the kind of problem we have on Fridays. So I have this hard conundrum about what day to put this at. I may move it back to Tuesdays so we don't actually collide with the IGDA meetup, which is probably bigger than the iPhone developer game meetup. So I am open to days, but Friday is probably not going to work for the in-person one. Europe, while I would love to be able to make it easier for Europe, we would have to have it right in the middle of the workday, and that's kind of hard to really get to the upper management to be okay with. So and also I'm sure you don't want me to stop development R to host the meetup. So that's usually why we have it at 7 p.m. because it's late enough for people to get off work and come here in person. What I really like to do in that situation is I really like to actually have someone run a European meetup. I don't mind running the online part, but I really need someone in person in Europe to actually, host the venue and host the projector and have people come. In that case, we can do it almost, as long as it's not really conflicting with my work schedule, we could do almost anything for that. I could help you guys with the online meetup part. But I think actually hosting a meetup in Europe will help with that kind of situation because I know there's such a giant time difference. And I really can't move the time on this meetup just due to the fact of the nature of meetups here. But I can move back to Tuesday if that works better for people. But Friday, unfortunately, is probably not going to fly very well. I'm also willing to help. We can help with meetups. There was a meetup, and Brandon was running a meetup in Dallas. I'm not sure what happened to that one. But that also might be a good place because there's a lot of you guys up in Dallas, Jerome. There's also a big group in San Antonio as well and Houston. So that might be a good place to start meetups. And we can help you by, again, you'd be access to our GameSalad meetup page to be able to meetups. And we can also help you talk to me ahead of time. I can help with like GoToMeeting type stuff to help run the online parts. Oh yeah, Phil made a point that it's already Friday here in Australia. Yep, and I thank you, Phil, for hanging out, for taking your Friday time in the morning, 11:30 in the morning, to join us in the meetup group.
There's a question about 13.7 and the RC. So basically, are there any changes that would break a 13.7 file in the RC?
I'm thinking. No. The 13.7 build is literally the exact same build for the garbage collector removed and fixes to deal with those breakages.
And no new features in that build.
The only thing I added was the tables. We added, Steve had done a bunch of Steve had done a bunch of table work to fix some of the table bugs. And one thing you might find on the difference between the RC and the non-RC is if you have a lot of tables, you may see an increase because all the table storage went to the native type. So, for example, if you're storing like 1, 2, 3, that was stored originally as a string, and now it's a number. So the 1, 2, 3 string, I believe, would be smaller than the actual number value. So in that case, you'd see an increase in your table size.
But on the other hand, if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you'd see a decrease.
Yes.
That would be 5 bytes versus 4 bytes.
Yes.
So are you sending is the change the same for the JSON or the network stuff? Does it affect the network format at all?
No, I think network's still a string. Yeah, and save format's still a string.
Oh no, like are numbers still strings or are they sets of numbers? Do you know?
No.
That's part of the network.
No, that's not network. I mean, as in like, are they close in case or not?
They're exactly like they were. Okay, tables.
Cool.
But it's internally.
Internally, they're stored as numbers.
Tables are stored as numbers.
Numbers or bools or whatever.
Or whatever, yeah. Bools are much smaller now.
Yeah.
Well, actually, not really, because they're actually stored as ints. Because we don't actually have to really type per se. But floats will definitely probably be smaller. And it's just there's a lot more efficiencies. Also, kind of that's kind of part of one of the common separated values. There's a lot more options now on the 13.7 RC. Than there were previously.
And the headers now get exported now.
Yeah, you can actually import and export the row and column headers, and you can import and export the column data types as well. So makes it a lot more robust.
Yeah, we had to do that because the old tables library did not work well with Arch.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks like a lot of you, other than grilling us, want to learn how to build your games faster. So it may be one of those things where we get CodeMonkey to do some tips on how to make games. But I'd also suggest if any of you have something you want to share but don't think it could take up a whole meetup, you could just propose it. What we could do is have a meetup of like Microsoft.
Yeah.
So like 3 or 4 people just
And
presenting.
I've mentioned this before. As far as making games better, there's actually a video series on YouTube called Extra Credits, and the guys there, they don't always discuss about how to make games better. Sometimes they talk about ancillary things, but they do have a lot of videos about how to actually design a game so that it's good. And things to think about when you're designing your game. I highly recommend looking at that. It's just extra credits, just to, yeah, really smart guys running that series. So definitely something to track down.
Okay, and we got a couple questions about anything specific with the. Do you do anything specific about images in your games? You shouldn't, but just be aware how we're rendering stuff now. And if you're having problems like things not showing up, send us in bugs and support tickets and nag me, and we'll look at it. I may be, like I said, maybe swamped for a few more days while I try to get through all the ARC stuff. But yeah, I'll get to that eventually.
There's a question here. Sorry if I missed it, but do I need to do anything?
That's why I did it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, yeah, no.
No, you just be aware of what we're doing, and if you're having problems where your images aren't showing up, send us a support ticket or a bug, and we'll look into it.
Yeah. If it's broken, it's actually broken. You weren't supposed to do anything special. In terms of optimizing, if you have repetitive patterns, make sure they're on a 64 pixel boundary. They're repeating within a 64 pixel block if you're optimized for it.
And Lojoy pointed out, and this is not actually true entirely, the 20 build with ARC, he had to run smoother for him, and that's not the case. We've actually had some people where the 1220 build actually ran horrible for them, especially on Yosemite.
Yeah, the general idea is that when they released Yosemite, they changed, and actually I think it's also just an update in Xcode, they changed the way the garbage collector worked to encourage us not to use the garbage collector,
yeah.
I assume. So the older builds might work better, but that's because they were built with a version of Xcode that gave us a good garbage collector that works well with a particular OS. And as the OS has changed, the garbage collector has changed. And
we also had to bump up. We also, at one point, Apple required you to sign with Mavericks and a bunch of other SDKs. We had to bump the SDK up.
So that means 10.7 won't work with 13.
Yes, it will, actually.
Oh, it will.
10.7 does. You're still supported. The only thing we found that doesn't support right now is iOS signing. Apple there's a bug in the code signer for the last version of Xcode you can update to. And it will not sign iOS 8 apps. I'm not sure of a workaround for it. So I am discussing about deprecating 10.7. I probably won't make any final decision until after the new OS comes out. But I am having problems supporting 10.7. It's becoming kind of hard to support it. But right now, yes, 10.7 does work with both 13 and in this case 14.1 build. Yes, you can use it. There may be like one crash that we had earlier, but we'll iron it out. But we're still officially supporting for that.
Mick H recommends Gamasutra. Agreed.
Yes,
Gamasutra is a very good website to go to for game design advice.
I don't know what Scott's posting there on YouTube. There's a YouTube video Scott has there.
Okay.
I don't know if it's good or not. I don't always watch all the videos, so.
Will there be a system for Windows 8 in-app purchases? Maybe. You could put in a feature request for it.
Is this my screen? Your screen is being shared there.
That's mine.
Oh, you're gonna. It is.
Oh, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to shut off your.
Yeah. Here.
So.
There you go.
For future reference, y'all can share particular apps and not your whole screen.
Yeah.
In the future, yeah. So in the future, will there be a system for Windows 8 in-app purchases? Maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
If enough people request it, or if it turns out to be really, really simple to add. Actually, that goes for Windows 10 as well.
Since we're hitting 9, so we're kind of getting to a point where we're going to be close to wrapping up. And so I'm thinking I was just going to show something feel good. If you get it on the forums, you've probably seen the post. And if not, come to the GameSalad page and share it. But we had a user who proposed using a game made with GameSalad. Actually, it's probably not best to show a whole video. Just go follow. Just go to the GameSalad Facebook page and look at the last post, and you'll see it there.
Yeah.
And yes, we do have sandwiches. On occasion, we get tired of pizza.
Yeah, we wanted sandwiches this time. I think it was better choice. So we have more sandwiches too. So you should come eat our sandwiches.
So Matthew, I did do a. There, that should help you answer your question, Matthew.
There you go. That's what people agree. That's what people think out of all our users.
Or at least the ones here.
At least the ones here.
Yeah. I mean, AdMob is native to Android, but Chartboost claims that they get better value for your money, so, and it seems to be nearly 50-50 split here, so.
And we just found out the Playhaven got sold again, yet to another company. So,
Yeah.
if you missed the post about it or email or if we even did one, Playhaven got sold from Upside. So if you've been talking directly to Upside, I would go back to playhaven.com and make sure your account is all in order. So because they've been sold around, so you want to probably find the right place to have your account set up. But yes, Chartboost. I've heard anecdotally I've heard good things about Chartboost. AdMob is just kind of cool because it is cross-network and owned by Google. But I think the fact that it's owned by Google means that its CPMs probably aren't as good since there's so much competition.
Yeah, and the hard part about this is like I swear, like it's like web programming languages. There's a new one like every couple months.
Yeah.
So we try to stay on top of it, but you know it's hard to. Yeah, we have other things we have to fix too. So we try our best.
If you have one you want us to support, make a feature request for it.
Yeah. Graphene, this will be a lot easier because you guys can just write plugins for it. You can go ask the ad network to write plugins for it. Lots of things to make Graphene easier. All right, so we're going to start wrapping up here, so get your final questions in. The classic poll question.
Yeah. Hard. 100% yes. 44% voted.
Wow.
50% voted. So more than half the people say we're done. I think we're done.
And we have thanks for the great meetup. Thank you guys all for coming. Really appreciate it. Everyone showing up. I'm still looking for a presenter for next month. We have